with, this is Paul Cooper. He works for Vodafone in the global IT asset management team. He started his career as a welder at Honda and took that actual natural progression from welding into IT asset management.
And this is Ash Scammell. For some reason I actually had to read that. Ash Scammell, he actually started his career as a British gas engineer and did exactly the same natural progression into IT asset management. So between us, I mean, this was kind of the turn of the century.
Yeah.
So we're getting on for 50 years of experience now. So there's an awful lot that we've seen and done, an awful lot of mistakes that we've made and learned from as well. So just to give you a bit of a heads up to where we are within Vodafone. So we started off, some of you might know Julia Veal, our boss, started off the IT asset management function within Vodafone in 2016. She brought us in as experienced people and supplemented that with quite a number of people that either have limited experience or are actually experiencing completely different areas to try to build not just a SAM practice, but a business practice. That worked out pretty well for us. So in 2020, I think it was, we were actually asked to be removed from the UK operation and move into the group function so that we could start to offer this service across every area of Vodafone that would have us. So we've now kind of moved from a internal department to an internal service provider. So we've had to start learning some brand new things about commercialization, about statement of works, SLA, all those kind of things. Whereas before it was just, we do it, that's what you need to know. But now we've moved into this new world. So yeah, that's just a bit of our history. So
you one step further forward than you think you are. So I wanted to say about the 4 streams main rivers. So when me and Paul started looking into this, there were 4 streams, 4 channels, for this, for that, for something else. And we started looking at it and going, none of these actually describe how big this is. Yeah. And streams, you think this nice little bambling brook flowing through. This isn't. This is quite a torrent of things that are going through and happening and that sort of thing. And it's all about how IT asset management can sit in the middle of this, yeah, and actually work with lots and lots of other teams to help them do what they need to do to resolve their issues. We're not, as IT asset management, we're not going to solve your issue on Florida, Sarah, but we're going to actually can help lots and lots of other teams from doing that sort of thing.
Cool. So what are these 4 rivers? So we've got there. Yeah, sorry. So resilience is not new. Like many things, it's a new way of talking about something that's existed for a really long time. Now we can talk about cloud. It's kind of a bit like, a data center that we used to have on site. Now it just tends to be off site with a few bells and whistles. But it is a new way of talking about these things that exist. But the reason we're talking about it now is obviously because of DORA and the explanation you gave earlier. Yeah, we can't compete with that one. So leave that with you. So lots of organizations would have been doing something about resilience, but maybe not to the levels they should have. And obviously now it's being a bit more focused. So
starting with data privacy, and these are very much, I loved your 5 words thing, and
could have been a lot more.
It will be, because 5 words things, these aren't, but if we thought of that, we would have done. But basically, data privacy, because a company that loses customers, data loses customers, yeah, and may be fined.
Then you have compliance, because a business that fails from regulatory compliance might not be able to do this.
Cybersecurity, because a breach that can take down a network for days or even weeks loses revenue and customers that will leave for a competitor with a working network.
And then there's enterprise risk management. So kind of the risk of everything else, really. So the financial risk, supply chain issues, reputational damage and natural disasters and so on. You're going to ask the question, aren't you?
I'm going to ask the question now. We had this question all set up because we didn't know the audience, but we think we're going to have a completely different answer to what we were going to have. So can we have a really quick show of hands of how many people have an ITAM function in their business? Oh, actually, We were almost expecting complete show of hands. Okay, interesting. But we will come back to that a bit later on. And actually, I put okay, interesting on my notes. So I guess in the same question as we had at this point, what has IT asset management got to do with the four pillars? Yeah, move on. You're just slightly ahead of me there. So we're going to go through some real life experiences. And Paul said we've been doing this for many, many, many years. And these are experiences across our whole career. So this is where we were saying at the beginning, this isn't something new to business. It's something they've been doing, but it's really, really come into focus. So we had a data privacy issue in the business where data was being extracted via cloud services, Dropbox and things like that. And our security teams went, we need to do something about this. How are we going to stop it? So we updated our filtering system, put blocks in place, stopped it. Problem's gone away. But it doesn't. What that actually ended up doing is creating another new problem. Yeah. Which was basically we provide services. Vodafone are a service provider. We provide services to lots and lots of other companies. There's lots and lots of other companies out there that don't choose Microsoft like we do. They use Google, they use Dropbox, they use these other services. So how are we actually going to stop? Because all of a sudden we've stopped people from working. How all of a sudden we're going to get these guys working again, but still have control over what data's moved and that sort of thing. So quite easy. Anybody who's technical, create an AD group, link it to your filtering system, put the people in the AD group. Those people get access, everybody else is blocked. Really, really simple solution. Yeah, but that causes another problem. Yeah. So they come along and they suddenly go, it's great. We've got all these people are working. Hey, people don't stay doing the same job all the time. People change, people come in, new contracts are signed, all this sort of thing. So all of a sudden we've got another problem now where we've got users, but there's nobody to manage this system. We've got a process for adding people to AD groups. We've got a process for taking them out. But who needs to make that decision on who should be in there and who shouldn't? And what happened in one of these meetings was it became quite a critical thing here. So they said, right, actually, we need somebody to come in and actually look at this from senior positions. And somebody senior looked at this and went, hang on a minute, asset management do this. Asset management already do this. We run a PC rights process where we control in the business who has access to PC rights in the business. We have what we call a decision tree. And that decision tree is a really simple process for somebody who is less skilled to follow. Really simple flow. Come in, somebody requests it. Do they meet these set of requirements? Yes, no's. Get to the bottom. No, they don't. They don't get it. Thank you very much. Yes, they do. So they approached us and said, could we, and Chloe was heavily involved in this, could we design a solution, yeah, where people could come and request access to sites, yeah, and then we can actually implement that using that same style of decision tree, put it in there. So without reinventing the wheel, without employing a single extra person, just taking some hours in preparation, we were able to solve quite a big problem for them, yeah, which was people not being able to do work and provide services to who they are. Now, my notes are a lot bigger than this, so I'm hoping I've really got over sort of the work that we had to do. It wasn't simple. It was hard work, and we went through lots of loops and lots of things, and we're still having meetings now because it's quite fully implemented. But we solved a problem, and we solved a problem from IT asset management by just being in the right place, by just running those processes and just communicating with people to let them know what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Cool. So moving on to the second, I've called it stream on here, we've called it rivers. Not very
Sorry.
So moving on to compliance. So firstly, what do we mean by compliance? As an ITAM person, I'm used to talking about license compliance, but for once, I'm actually not. So we're talking about regulatory compliance. Compliance with some or all of these regulations can mean the fundamental ability to do business. So can mean the ability to complete electronic payments or not. It can allow you to tender for that lucrative new contract, or it could even stop you from being fined through the nose. An example would be ISO 27001. So those audits, I'm very aware that you're here now going, you're about to say something that might not be actually true. But these audits now require you to have specific data on assets with vulnerabilities and what the true risk level is. So Vodafone are ISO 27001 certified, and we need this as a right to do business. So we're audited several times a day through, you know,
Not several times a
several
day.
several times a year for financial institutions, and it does take up quite a lot of our time. And one of the things that we've actually worked out is that we've got various different standards that we have to adhere to. And the ability to promote the data that we've got in a really nice, clear manner means that we can actually use the same data to support the audits across a number of these different regulations. I've missed an entire element of notes. But it's not just about ISO regulations. There's also others, PCI, TSR, HIPAA, and so on. We have TSR because of the kind of business we do, and we'll talk about that one later. And we are living it right now, and it takes up an awful lot of our time. So we'll cover more of that later.
So cybersecurity is what everybody thinks of when they're talking about resilience, when they're talking about this. It's an area you instantly go to, yeah. And this is not my list. I found this list, yeah. These are general daily attacks that go out, that are recorded by security vendors and going out there. And we put this one there because it's much easier to read when it comes out as a PDF. That are actually happening and actually out there. And then again, you're sitting there going, how does asset management sit within this? Because surely this is a cybersecurity thing. And what we have here, and I'm going to slow down our talking because we rattled really fast through these first ones. What we have here is the chance to do extra work and extra things with that data that we own. So we've got agents, we pulling in lots and lots of information. So within our team, one of the things that cyber want to talk about is how do we, as a team, check for vulnerabilities that are out there. Cyber have got tools, yeah, that's great. They can report on all the vulnerabilities that are out there and everything, which is actually wonderful. Next problem is how do you actually fix them? Yeah, and again, where we are, we sit in a position of looking at licensing, looking at control. So we know what's on our machines, yeah? We know whether it's licensed, whether it's supported and all that sort of thing as an IT asset management function. The other part that we do, because we're a little bit of control freaks, is we control PC rights, so people can't put software on their machines, but we also control the packaging and deployment of software within the business. So again, we're keeping that control within the team to help ourselves out with the software asset licensing, but it also has an effect. And one of those effects for cyber was they had a single point of contact to come back to say, we're finding vulnerabilities in desktop applications, in server applications. We're in 30 odd countries. How do we have an easy route in to contact people and say, we've got this, we need you to upgrade it, we need you to remove it, we need you to do whatever. And we have within our process a software approval board. So all our software is approved, it's vetted, it's checked by security, it's checked by a licensing specialist, it's checked by architecture to say it's suitable to go on the network. So as part of this, we can get a report that comes in, says, yes, we've got a vulnerability in an approved piece of software that's on the network. How do we fix this? Now, for us, it's like we need to get a new one packaged. We need to get a new one deployed. We need to get that out and fixed as quick as possible. Desktop side, on the server side, slightly harder because change requests come into it and all that sort of thing. But we are in that position where we're communicating with these teams all the time. So we now have a standard process in place that goes, hey, we've got a vulnerability on this version of software on the server. Can you please get it upgraded? And they'll go through their checks and everything else they have to do on the server to make sure that happens. But again, it's just us sitting in that middle position, saying to we've got the data, we've got some resources, how can we help?
And just talking about vulnerabilities, obviously we're all aware of the fact that quite often when there are some of these vulnerabilities, they need an innocent victim to trigger something bad happening. So just to give you an example of a real world example of that. So before I worked for Vodafone, I worked for another large company, and there was a particular developer that decided that he wanted to use the new version of SQL Server. And in his eagerness, because he was that kind of guy, he just went and found a really nice, easy download link and downloaded it on his machine one evening, started playing around with it. It was the best thing ever, according to this guy. He needed to get a line. But he then brought that machine back in to work the following day, connected it to the network, and it took a trading floor down for about 3 or 4 hours. And this was a trading floor that was operating at something like £50,000 a minute or something like that. So you can imagine how that went down. The investigation found it was exactly this link that had caused it. The guy was just trying to do his job. He was just trying to do something to try and use some new features, but it just showed the reason why we put some of these controls in place. And the one benefit, if there was one, is that we were actually able to, as an ITAM function, we were actually able to start putting controls in place to say, that doesn't happen again. This is what we're going to do to avoid that ongoing forwards. So in addition to those sort of bad actors and whatever, you've also got unforeseen accidents. We've put this one up here because it happened so recently. Nothing bad about what had actually gone on, but it did have quite an impact on an awful lot of companies around the world. So yeah, we'll talk about them maybe later. This is still me. So moving on to the final stream, enterprise risk management. You could actually see this as a bucket to put everything else in that doesn't meet the other three. But let's have a little look at some of the examples of these over the last few years. So the first one is really obvious. We all lived it. We all had to make some drastic changes to all of our lives, and we all got used to the term furlough and things like that. Some organisations were able to continue trading, but with some huge changes. Vodafone were actually able to continue because of those resilient sort of policies and processes. So to give you an example on this, so 3 weeks prior to the national lockdown, we started working, we were approached to gather some data to start looking at if we needed to stop, what kit have we got? What can we do? Have we got laptops anywhere so that if we need to send our several thousand strong call centres to work from home, what do they actually need to do? Have we got laptops for them? Have we got enough VPN capacity to allow them all to try and connect to our systems without any kind of risk to customer, to the user experience and so on? We managed to get that in place. I think it was ourselves, security, it was Office IT. We managed to get that up and running and tested and implemented in that 3-week period. So when the national lockdown kicked in, we were already working as a working from home organisation. So obviously there are certain people that can never do that. We've got field engineers who are up masks at 3 o'clock in the morning, as you mentioned earlier with a little story. And you've got the retail staff who the shops were shut. What can they do? So actually what Vodafone did for those people was actually to say, right, well, we're going to provide you with laptops. We're going to give you the training that you need, and you're going to operate as a call center staff for the foreseeable future. So I think the experience from a user perspective was they didn't notice anything different. And obviously with everything else that was going on, you could argue that actually there were so many big changes in everybody's life that maybe this was the one to worry about. But it was great for us as a communications company to turn around and say, look, you want to call your mum, you want to call your family, you need to have that social engagement in any way you can. We're trying to make sure that you can keep that happening. As I say, we did that by essentially becoming a work from home organisation.
So one of the things that happened during this, and it's a little thing that I loved, we followed our then CEO Nick.
Scott Petty.
Scott, no, it wasn't Scott. The other Nick, not Reed. Nick Jeffrey. In a government meeting where they were talking about how telcos were coping and how we were providing the extra bandwidth for everybody to work at home and all this sort of thing. And Nick explained that we had everybody working from home, apart from our operations centre, who now, rather than working on one floor, were working over 2 floors. We had everybody from home. Call centre people, we furloughed nobody. Yeah. And they cut across to the poor gentleman from BT, who they hadn't sent a very senior person in, and they said, and how about you? And they went, we haven't even considered sending our call centre people home. Yeah, it's a different mentality. The teams that got those laptops, they went through lockers, they went through everything, they rebuilt machines. What they did was way above and beyond. Yeah, they were really, really finding any piece of kit. We had 8,000 brand new laptops sat in a container in a port that we couldn't get our hands on, but we had to get these things out. Yeah, and they did an absolutely marvelous job, outstanding. Moving on, Ukraine. So we had the Ukraine invasion, yeah, and you sit there and think, well, how's IT asset management? How do a telco fix there? We have a disaster recovery plan, yeah, for any sort of instance, earthquakes, fires, terrorist incidents. The amount of bandwidth that was on the Ukraine border within hours, yeah, was absolutely outstanding, because every Vodafone European one picked up their kit, got them into trucks, vans, aeroplanes, and drove them across to that border. They were handing out mobile phones, they were handing out air credits to people coming across the border. We couldn't go the other side, but they could provide as much as they could in there. And our little job in that was very, very small. Yeah, we just make sure the guys that have got the kit that need to go out and do this have everything they need. Those are the type of guys that suddenly need PC rights. Yeah, because they don't know where they're going, where they're going to turn up, and they just need to be able to do what they need to be able to do. So those are the ones that get it really, really quickly.
I don't know if everyone's going to see that one, but this is the TSR.
TSR, Telecom Security Regulations. So you all remembered Huawei and the whole Huawei incident, and should we have a Huawei kit within our core networks and things like that. And on the back of that, we've had new regulations come in. And as part of these new regulations, it's about knowing where every asset is, what every asset does, what every state that asset is in, yeah, what software it has and everything else, yeah, all these things. Now, as an IT asset management function, you can see actually we're in a prime position for this, yeah. We know where most of this kit is, yeah, but this is bigger than your standard IT asset management. We got things from undersea cables to your masts to your kit. So it's not just your standard IT asset management. We have other asset management teams that look after different parts of this. And it's about bringing all that data together. Now, one of the key things about TSR, and talking about the GDPR fines earlier on, and I've got to find the actual stats on here. So when you look at GDPR fines, the TSR fine is 2.5 times greater than that. So it's a maximum of £20 million or 4% of global turnover for GDPR. For TSR, it's 10% of turnover plus £100,000 a day, yeah, for the length of the failure. Yeah, so they're really, really serious on it. Yeah, and they're really, really pushing, and we're doing lots of work. Same as DORA, yeah. At the moment, we've got 42 attributes that we have to be able to report on. They've given us the 42 attributes, but they've not told us what they want the report to look like. So we're in that one of we're gathering data, but we don't know what the output needs to be. It's going to come along. It's going to hit us. I'll say huge amounts of work are happening. It's currently UK, but the expectation is the EU would take this on. Yeah, it's such a big, big thing that they're expecting it to go across. So Vodafone are working on the process of, we're not just doing this for the UK, we're currently doing this for the whole of Europe. And then the follow-on plan is, because it's a good idea to do this, we'll do this globally. Yeah, and I say we're in 30 odd countries, so the amount of data that we're generating with this is absolutely massive. And there isn't a tool out there to do this. This is something that has to be in a cloud platform with data scientists, and they're the ones that are shouting because they need to know, you know, you're giving us all your data, we're cleaning up all your data, tell us what you want your outputs to be. And at the moment, nobody can tell them what they want the outputs to be. So we're a little bit lost there.
Moving into, I think it was December last year. Yeah, it might have been a bit earlier. But VMware were bought out by Broadcom. So Broadcom created their own little cache point. So when it comes to ITAM, so what data we hold, you know, where this is installed, what products we're using, what contracts we've got, what the terms of the contract are, all of those kind of things came together so that we could then support the procurement team into negotiations with them. And we've taken a very different approach to AT&T in the States. I think there's those court cases, I think, are still going on, aren't they? So yeah, we're trying a different approach. But one of the things that we actually experienced was during the migration from a VMware license portal to the Broadcom one, we lost, it was a 7-figure value of license keys. So we had to fight to get those back. And I don't think we're quite there yet. We have gone over the 7-figure value of sort of recouped value, but we're still not quite there at this moment in time. But the reason we've been able to do that is because of the data that we've held. And it seems really quite simple when you put it that way. But knowing exactly what license keys we have, knowing where this is used, knowing exactly what the hardware specs are for all of these, that has meant that we've been able to go into this conversation with Broadcom, who presumably all of you have had some experience with Broadcom, and I can guarantee that none of it's good. They're very, very difficult to deal with. So the fact that we've had that data there to support us has been really helpful to a lot of people.
Really not picking on it. So it was just the biggest latest incident. So we used to be a CrowdStrike user, and we're not anymore. And somebody made that decision a good few months before to replace it. So we took CrowdStrike out, put something else in, which is quite fortunate to us. But we got a call, all working hours started to go, is this a problem for us? Yeah, what have we got? Is this a problem? So we could very quickly hit our data, start pulling out some reports, and we found some CrowdStrike installations. Yeah, little bit of investigation was these are all leftover or failed uninstalls. Yeah, and this is something that everybody will have. Yeah, everybody will do. You'll put a project in, you'll go around, can we go and run this? And you move it from 100,000 devices. Yeah, and at the end of it, you go, has anybody gone to check that it's all come off? And it's normally the question's no. Yeah, so we then have a process in place called deny listed, yeah, applications, which we take from our report. So we have a report that we work on with security from the licensing team. We make a decision why those applications shouldn't be in the environment, and we use that same process. So this wasn't a deny listed application at the time. We turned it into a deny listed application, yeah, because it shouldn't be on the network. And then we kicked that process off, which was how do we get all these things off the network? Yeah, these are all, I think we had 20 on some desktops, all the rest were on servers. The desktop ones were all quite quickly fixed, probably within 24 hours. The others are working through the process. Yeah, change controls, everything else, convincing the teams that they have to go in and remove it, trying to argue that the scripts didn't work. And the other thing is some of it might not be a full installation. So we actually the teams are actually having to look at it and find out what's been left behind, that's been left that we record and it's still there. So it's not an easy task the server guys are doing. The desktop ones were much, much easier to do. But the process is happening and we're getting that one off. And again, we're coming to that point of we've got a process, we've got a policy, we've got the data. Yeah, it's just using it for something else. Yeah, now these are not all, but quite a few of them come from security. We do a lot of work with the security teams because our data is better than some of their data. Yeah, we're looking at something very different. One of the ones which went on pre-2020 when we wanted to start this slide was whenever we upgraded one of the security tools and the upgrades were put out, the service would stop and not restart automatically, which is fine. On most, it was only on desktops. On most desktop devices, it's fine because users restart the machine, the service restarts. But what they were noticing, there was out of 30,000, there was 1,000 or so devices that weren't being restarted by users. Yeah. So they were getting reports of failures coming back, but they didn't know why. Where in our tool, we had the ability to report on the services that were running at the time the scan happened. So the teams, every time they put a patch out, would literally just come to me and say, put a new patch out, can you run us a report? For the next 3-4 days in a row, I'd run a report on all the stop services Yeah, and then they could go out to those users and get them to restart their machines. Yeah, eventually we took that process on from them. The tool's now gone, fortunately, partly because of that, because it was so unreliable in reporting its own service back that the team went out and went, we'll spend some money on something that works better.
So we hastily changed this slide yesterday. So the words on my notes don't quite match here, but essentially we're at the summary stage. So earlier on we sort of said how many people have got an ITAM function, and actually we were quite surprised that it was almost 50-50 sort of split. So for those of you that don't have one, the likelihood is that some ITAM activity has already been done in your organization. It's just you might not know about it. So one of the key things here is, you know, you might have the one team, or it might just be split everywhere. Having good communications and understanding what data is available is essential. You might not need to come up with something new. You know, one of the things that we'll say is don't reinvent the wheel at all. If it's already there, how can you tap into it? Do you just group together those data sources, or do you bring that team together to manage the individual pieces? Another thing that's really key is data accessibility. So that kind of follows on from the previous point, really, where if that data exists, then if it's not in particularly good quality, how do you make it good quality? Because making the quality good is then going to allow you to have accessible data across different areas. So if we're talking about the security teams, or the risk and compliance team, being able to turn around and say, we've got the data you need in a format that you can use really easily is really, really important. And the last point that we've got here, Ash did want to start doing some vanilla ice. I think that
elaborate and listen. I've got another question for you as well when we finish. Please don't let me forget. It is exactly that. If we go back to that really early example where security found a problem, put their solution in and went through, and nobody really thought about the consequences of doing this. Yeah, it literally was a case of once it got to the right person, they went, actually, this isn't a problem. Something that somebody's already doing. We just need to bring them into that conversation. Yeah, and we're very much advocates of, we're not leaders in lots and lots of things, but what we are is in the middle of it all. Yeah, fingers in lots and lots of pots, because we help lots and lots of teams, and that pays back. That just constantly pays back. And as Paul said, please don't reinvent the wheel. That should be it. Questions. So I've got one important question. Right at the beginning of the presentation, I had a suggestion that Paul flatly refused in the end. I did try and push it. Yeah, so after the introductions, it was going like, this is Paul, this is Ash, and I was going to go, and together we'll get our ITAMers. I was really worried people wouldn't get the reference, but I thought everybody would. Who's right? Is it a Paul? So
the reference.
Oh, that's all right then.
I do think it's very good. Very good.
One thing we never promise with our presentation that our jokes are good. What we promise is they will be spattered in and out of the presentation. There are questions.
But yeah, thanks for listening.
On a situation like CrowdStrike, it was my company's experience that we didn't have any direct exposure, but our supply chain did. So what can a team like yours do to help someone like me understand when something like this is going to heat up in my supply chain?
Right. So in terms of the data, we don't, because it's their data, their things. What we do have in some of the contracts, and it's a bit hit and miss about where we are, is contacts. Yeah. So we live on contacts. We live on knowing who to talk to in certain places. So we would be a position there where I think if we'd had a bigger problem, we would have had those questions going, who else do we know that runs this within our supply chain? But most of that would have gone to our contracts team, our supply chain team. So that, and again, even with that, that's one of the routes that we would have pushed somebody. So when we get questions like that, sometimes we don't have the answer, or it's not us. our team philosophy is don't just end the conversation, leave somebody dead, try and push them on to somebody else, try and find somebody else who actually possibly can help them out.
And that's actually one of the notes that I took from your session was how do we make sure that we've got those links with our suppliers, our partners? Obviously, the nature of our team now is what we started calling it
Which one?
the internal service provider kind of thing. So obviously when we talk about partners, we're talking about internal, but obviously yes, those external companies as well. And there are so many partners that we've got. So one of the notes that I made was about how do we make sure that we've got those right contacts there, and actually some of those key sort of methods of doing business and those kind of things. So that's something that I'm going to take away from here. So I don't have an answer for you right now, but maybe this time next year, who knows?
It's a good first answer, just saying like, I don't know, but I can help you find somebody who does.
Absolutely. And that's very much the case. When we get a vulnerability reported to us, so we cover Spain and Italy. If one of them from Spain comes and says, we want to report on this application, we've got vulnerability listed on it, we don't just stop there. We don't go, oh, here's your Spain data and it's sorted. We go, right, actually, we're going to look across all our markets. Yeah. How do we fix their problem before they even know they've got a problem? Yeah. And that sort of thing. So that's one of the things, again, about sitting there, trying to take that view of, yes, it's more work for us, but actually it's going to fix our customers' problems. And again, because we're in this opposition of being Vodafone, but being a service, yeah, it's very much, we have to think of them as customers. How do we keep that going?
That sounds like quite a challenge there, having worked in a couple of multi-country companies, trying to be able to say, here's your question about Spain, and by the way, Chile, did you know about this too?
Taking it sort of off topic a bit. I mean, one of the things that we've experienced, more so Ash and myself, because being senior members within the team, we've had to learn so many different new skills as part of that transition, because both of us were license managers, in previous roles. So we've gone from, if you want a quote for the amount of SQL Server licenses you've got, or you want to design a new data center, we can do the licensing. But now we're talking about how we actually engage with our customers, that business relationship management kind of element. So we picked up quite a lot of those kind of things. So yeah, every day's a school day.
Yes.
The vulnerability management topic, have you got a concept of service tiering or server tiering? I guess you've got hundreds of thousands of servers. Which ones do you do first?
So depends on, so we have a vulnerability scale. So we start with some that actually we don't even think this is going to be a problem. So actually, if you can fix it during your next patch cycle, brilliant. Otherwise, don't. Right the way to actually, if we can't fix it, we'll turn the service off. Yeah. Again, there are some services that are not touched, but it's like, if this isn't a customer or business critical service and the vulnerability is such, we'll shut that service down until it's fixed. So we don't do that. We just pull that data in. But yeah, on the desktop side, we do, that does matter to us because it's down to us how quickly we can get that software packaged and out. And on the desktop side, we haven't had to use it, but again, if it's that vulnerable, we remove first and then let the package come in back around. On the server side, we hand that over to them. So the teams then go, right, okay, it's in our area, where does it sit on their level, and then follow their processes. Because the processes can be slightly different, again, depending on which country we're in.
How do you maintain that list across all the regions that you're dealing with?
Yeah, so we fortunately work with a in each market. Yeah, so we have a single point to go into, and that person then does the job of saying, right, you need to talk to this person or this person. Having that also means that if the person's on holiday, they know who the replacement is. Yeah, so we have some really, really good contacts in the market. That's really, really important to get those processes to work, because otherwise we just hit a wall. But again, with some of them where the teams don't think it's a serious problem and don't really want to do it, we go back to that person as an escalation to say, look, it's not happening. Can you then force it through? And they'll use their own escalations within each market. We're providing the service, they need to do the work, but we don't let it go. We don't go, well, we've told you about it, we're off. We chase it up. We go back 3 weeks later and go, where are we with, oh, okay, the change is next week, or actually, no, that change hasn't been raised yet. And it's like, yeah, we can just keep pushing that through. And we use that risk register that we have for the market. So if we find one, it goes on that risk register, and then we update our progress on it. Eventually, at some point, we do have to go, there's no more we can do. It really is you as a market, and we hand then the risk onto the market. Does that cover everything?
Yeah, it does. I guess the only other thing I'm thinking is, where does your mandate come from a senior level to make sure that those markets obey the instructions that you're throwing out?
One thing we do have is really good senior management buy-in. So the whole structure in Vodafone has changed, and our next presentations will be not as Vodafone, will be as Voice, which is the name for that service provider part of Vodafone. It's all Vodafone, but that service provider fine. They're really, really keen. Yeah, so Scott, who runs the CIO for the area, he came from the UK. So his one really is a case of, these are the mandates, these are the things people are trying to do. If you're stopping it further down, unless you've got a really good business decision, like actually we can't do it because if you take this system down tonight, it's going to cause all these other problems. But that's where we lead that to the market. But yeah, we do have that buy-in, and also they're providing a service from us. So ultimately, if they come back to us and say, actually, we're not going to do it, again, we pass that risk on to them. That is now their problem to deal with. We'll move on to something else.
And we do escalate those risks up through that appropriate management chain. So we can have those conversations on a almost peer-to-peer across borders kind of basis, but also we go up through our management chain whilst they go up through theirs as well. And yeah, I mean, as Ash said, we've got some really good support. So not only was Scott Petty the CTO for UK, and Pedro Sardo was the CIO, they both moved across to this new group umbrella company, for want of a better. And both of them had acknowledged the value that we were offering the UK. And so that's actually what started us moving into that area. So we didn't go sort of pushing for a move into this area. They came and dragged us away. We were happy to do it, but it was certainly driven from above. And so because we've already got that buy-in, it means that it's a much easier journey. But when we're trying to talk to them, because to go to somebody like Scott Petty, who is there's only one person senior to him in the entire organization. We can go to his door. We've got that strength of relationship, whether it's ourselves or through the management structure. We can go there and say, I don't know how to talk to you, because it's a very different way that you talk to us. So having that awareness of how to communicate and that strength of that relationship that pre-exists, that helps us a huge amount.
I guess from January, you've got Dora on your side now as well.
Yeah. That's the thing, one of the things, Sarah, from your presentation, the amount of times that you think, I'm coming in to talk to you and you're going to say, oh, not her again, kind of thing. But we kind of see a lot of that as real positives, because it gives us the strength to back up a lot of what we're doing. So, in that sense, it's a good time.
I think you're right. One of the things is where we take on jobs and roles is purely because we can see a gap. Yeah. And if there's a gap and nobody's doing it, actually, should we take it on? Sometimes you sit there and go, actually, we shouldn't take it on. It's nothing to do with us, but we'll take it on. That strengthens the team. It strengthens the support in other areas. And ultimately, we're a business. And at some point, somebody's going to go, the economy's not that good. We need to make losses. Actually, that team's really important, not to just us, but to all these other people. There was one question at the back, but it is time. Should we talk separately? All right.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, we'd like to be on time, and Rich is next.
Needs all the time.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Very quick question, which is,
I've just stopped that lady from asking a question.
look, in all that context,
Yeah.
how ready are you for Dora as a percentage? Just give us a number.
I'm going to have a separate conversation with our compliance team.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know. Our compliance team, I do the ISO audits and all those internal audits from Lloyd's and all those sort of things that come through. I sit on that. I've written the processes for our team to do it, and I'm just getting two of our junior team members to take the process over from me. I need to go back to them and say, where are we with it? And that was my takeaway.
Thank you.